Okay, so welcome to this latest episode of ABNcast. My name's Lee Hayhurst. I'm editorial director of ABN, and we've brought the studio away from its normal HQ in North London to visit the offices of Trip.com Group. We're here to talk to Trip.com Group today because they are one of our supporters of what we've launched this year, our Best Places to Work in Aviation Awards and Initiative, which is all about the industry and its people. Now, Trip.com Group, as you'll hear in a minute, is an online travel agency group. They're involved in the selling of travel and aviation and flights globally. But they're very much interested in what goes on in terms of the people in the industry as well as the technology. So I'm delighted to introduce James Spalding from Trip.com Group. Welcome.
Hello there.
James. Welcome, James.
Thank you.
Just to introduce Trip.com Group to the listeners, just a bit of an overview of what the company is and what you do.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for having me, Lee. Great to have you guys here. And a quick introduction for myself. My name's James Spalding. I'm the regional director for the flights business within Trip.com Group. I lead the sales and commercial team for Northern Europe and North America. And primarily we work B2B with our airline partners. But the group itself, Trip.com Group as itself, is, as you say, a platform OTA. We focus on B2C sales for our consumers, for our travellers.
Yeah, and I'm personally delighted that we're working with James and Trip.com Group because I first met James, this is going back quite a while, I can't even remember the year, but it was at the World Aviation Festival, which at the time was quite a small event than it is today, but it was held in Islington, just not far from here, in the design centre, wasn't it? And we first met there and did things with me in my previous role. So it's great to get them on board with this. We've spoken in the past quite a bit about people in the business, different people and different skills in terms of aviation, the aviation world of aviation, but actually it's still an important issue for you guys, and I know it's something you take a lot of care over, and you've got a lot of people in the business all over the world. I mean, it's going to be thousands now, including in the UK. So just give us an idea how Trip.com Group looks after its people. Why are people so important to the business? Particularly, we're talking in an age of technology, of automation, and people are saying maybe there's less need for humans. But actually, I don't think that is Trip.com Group's philosophy, is it? Not at all,
no, not at all. People are fundamental to our business, not just from a customer traveller perspective, but also, as you say, from an employee perspective. When I joined Trip.com Group just over 5 years ago now, when we first met, as you say, at the Aviation Festival, I was the first person for the flights team employed here locally within Europe. We had a strong HQ team for product and commercial support. And one of the reasons I wanted to join the company was the discussions I'd had. They were really interested in making sure they had the local expertise and that market knowledge. And that's important for us throughout the business, regardless of the kind of the line of business. We want to make sure we've got that diversity of employees, the local context. From there, you can really kind of localize and build up from what you're trying to do. As we started to expand internationally into new markets, the concept from Trip.com Group is have that global support, have that kind of global framework, but make sure you're bringing in that local element to make sure that you're kind of making it relevant to the market in that market. And obviously, you introduce yourself. You're B2B in the business. You work with aviation, the airlines in the business. But of course, you're a B2C. You're a customer-facing brand as well, with Trip.com as the main brand for consumers. So you're dealing with consumers a lot. Why is it important again that consumers deal with real people? You know, there are chatbots out there, there's lots of AI, but still real people are still important in the travel industry. Absolutely. And we saw that over the last few years, especially in the pandemic period. Customer service is at the forefront of what we do, and that really came to its strengths during that kind of challenging period for everybody. From our side, being an online platform for customers to be able to make reservations, book their tickets and their other travel needs, you always want to have that human interaction. Technology and AI can absolutely kind of turbocharge it and enhance that kind of that customer focus that we have. But from our side, you need to make sure you still have that foundation with the people behind the business to bring it to everyone.
I mean, I attended your big international event in Singapore last year. It was, I think, the first time we did it outside of China for all your partners. So a lot of hoteliers, a lot of airlines were there, anyone who's sort of supplying and selling through this platform. And there's a lot of talk about AI and a lot of talk about what technology can do for your business. where do you think AI sits? Where, in terms of working with the human beings in the business and what it can do, how it can enhance their role?
Yeah. Well, we really see it as an enabler. From our side, we use it in several different areas of the business. I would say the three main areas that we use it for is the kind of the top of the funnel, the marketing and the inspiration side of it. That's when you get things like AIGC, the AI generated content, and the how we're kind of getting ourselves in front of our travelers and inspiring them to travel. You then have the customer service element of it and how we're using different tools to enable our customer service teams to help with the processing of it. That also comes into the operational side for it. So if one of our airline partners has a flight disruption or cancellation, then we're able to use our AI tools to really communicate that through the app, take in the information that we've got and really make sure that the traveler's got a way of responding to that without all the kind of the clunky processes that may not be there if you're not an online or a technology focused business.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key themes and ideas I think we want to get across with Best Places is that customer service, as you mentioned, is super important. It's probably actually, and like you said, COVID demonstrated this. It may be the thing that makes you stand out against your competitors when people need help, particularly in the aviation sector where there's often disruption, there's often need to sort of react in real time very quickly and get some information out there that the customer desperately wants. But it's very hard for your employees to give that amazing customer service if they haven't got the technologies to hand. So you actually have to look after your employee experience as much as you do your customer experience, because if you've got the employee experience correct, the customer experience almost takes care of itself. Is that, I mean, sort of broadening it for the aviation sector as a whole, that's probably a theme the aviation sector itself could grasp.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the way that we kind of approach that side of it is our customer service teams, you need to make sure they understand what they're doing and that they've got the processes in place to support them. And then when you do need that human touch element into it, you can bring that to life. Going back to one of the points we talked about earlier, the way that we're kind of set up here in the European market is we have our customer service centre up in Edinburgh. We have our offices here in London, which is our commercial hub. So we have all of the commercial teams with the local relationships for B2B based here. And then we have our Shanghai office, which is for product and support. There's a lot of the support and operational functions which are done there. So for us, we have that kind of localization, that kind of people focused within the market to make sure that we're able to kind of do our jobs to the best of our abilities. And then we've got the technology and the AI of it, bringing it all together to make sure we can have those conversations. The third part when it comes to AI for us is really the kind of the data and the digital aspect of it, the kind of analytical ways that we're using AI technologies to kind of turbocharge our business.
Yeah, and it's almost like trying to take something that is done naturally at a small level, the old-fashioned kind of high street travel agent or the store, you have that personal relationship, and making that happen at a mass scale.
Exactly.
For a company like yours, you're trying to do this globally with thousands of customers a day. So that's tough. Technology can only really help with that.
That's it. And that's why we say technology and AI is an enabler, because you're building on what the people at the business have kind of put as a priority, and really kind of making sure that it's there to support them rather than replace them.
Yeah. Do you think aviation naturally, especially on its operational side, is very conservative with change, because change on the negative side can be very important and it can go badly wrong. And obviously safety and everything is the number one priority for aviation. But do you think that sort of maybe holds the industry back a little bit in terms of its ability to innovate quickly? And does the sector in general need to find ways to do that, or maybe work with guys like Trip.com Group, which are in a place where they can innovate a bit more quickly?
And I would highlight the kind of the latter point there. We want to be trailblazers. We want to be kind of enabling and leading our partners, especially from a kind of a flights and an aviation perspective, B2B side, to make sure that we're kind of helping them try new things, try new technologies. A project we've been working on recently is the IATA 1ID process, and again, again, for us, that means that we're always kind of thinking ahead to what our customers need, and making sure that we're kind of helping to enable and lead some of that innovation. Technology is at the heart of everything that we do, and as you say, you need to make sure you're keeping on top of the trends and changes to make sure, one, you're not getting left behind, but at the same time you're kind of helping build that future.
So that you mentioned IATA 1ID, that's this idea that everyone's got a digital identity that everybody recognises wherever they go. So those touch points become more
You're using
seamless.
biometric data on top of technology enablers.
And from your point of view, Trip.com Group plays a role in getting that into the industry, because there's so many players that need to be on board with that. You can't do it by yourself.
That's it. And again, when you look at the global travel industry that we're in, you can't just take one country, one agency, one airline and think this is what works for us. You've got to think about the bigger picture. With this project in itself, it's very involved with the airports as well. You've got to make sure the airports have got that technology to be able to kind of bring it to life. So it's not just about what are we doing to change technology. An example would have been from the paper ticket to the e-ticket for a consumer kind of travel and process. This is kind of looking at the next stage of that, and how are we kind of looking at that customer journey, that customer experience, from the start to the finish. And again, even when they're in destination, how are we using technology to fulfill their travel needs?
There's an interesting dynamic in the industry, and it's not just in aviation, it's in travel per se, is that anything you do, you're also you're cooperating, but you're also competing. So you're obviously focused as a company on the retail side of it. You want to be great retailers, merchandisers, whatever, e-commerce and digital. Okay, the airlines want to be able to do that as well, but that's just part of what they have to get their heads around. It's a tricky one for them to sort of focus on. So you cooperate and you compete at the same time. But do you think you're being seen as trailblazers in all this, and so the airlines look at you and go, we want to be more like how Trip.com Group operates? And obviously, would you welcome that, because in a sense they're also then competing with you?
Definitely. And again, it's about collaboration more than competing, I would say, when we work with our airline partners. And from that perspective, what I mean is an airline does a very good job at kind of flying their passengers and their cargo, whatever it is, around. And yes, they have their own .coms, their own website and their own retail proposition and strategies, and we can complement that. So their websites aren't necessarily designed to focus on other lines of business outside of flight, hotels, tickets and tours, train, things like that. So for us, it's how can we make sure we're showing them what we can do from a merchandising perspective, and use some of our kind of power to help enrich what they're doing. We're happy for them to kind of learn from us and use it into their own kind of websites from that side. The fun starts happening when you're collaborating on new and exciting projects which enhance the customer experience or the airline proposition from outside of the traditional kind of book, travel, fly perspective.
There does seem to be a lot happening in that area. So you mentioned the One ID, but there's also this order offer idea, another IATA initiative that builds on new distribution capability, without getting too technical about all these things, because you can get into a very deep rabbit hole.
It's another podcast in itself.
It is, maybe quite a few. But NDC's been around, more than a decade, and still really only just being adopted. And also now we're talking about moving on from that. But I do get the sense maybe 24 is the year where, even if it doesn't happen in 24, at least we see the start of it really accelerating. And I think probably COVID did that a little bit. It made people sort of focus on, well, if we don't do this, we could face the same problem again, and we'll be in a lot of trouble. So a lot of this change now needs to happen. Do you feel you get the sense that 24 could be a year we look back on and go, you know what, some real strides were made there, and hurdles were jumped, and we go on from 24 and really adopt this new form of retailing? And
no, absolutely. And I do feel my take on and how we are at the moment, especially in that world, is at the end of 2023 or kind of through 2023, we saw the end of the organic recovery from the COVID period, really. And as you say, a lot of airlines, a lot of agents, a lot of kind of the aviation industry in itself, even outside of the aviation industry, businesses took that opportunity to kind of work as a catalyst on their business. What do they need to change, and what do they want to focus on kind of going forward? And we've seen at the end of last year, coming into this year, really kind of what our airline partners are doing in that, as you say, the distribution space, and what their focuses and priorities are there. And that's really exciting for us, because as you say, as a technology company, we can really help assist on that side of it, and make sure we're working with our airline partners on whatever their strategies are for that distribution side. side. There's very much a balance in terms of how quickly you roll things out, to making sure that kind of change isn't disrupting your existing kind of framework and infrastructure, but at the same time it's about kind of making sure you're resilient to the future. And as you say, if one partner is doing this, if one agent or one airline is doing something, then are you adopting those changes to make sure you're staying relevant and competitive?
Okay, look, we'll finish this podcast a bit in a minute to talk about a bit views on where the industry is in general, some of the trends you're seeing and the ongoing recovery from COVID. But just a final thought on this idea of people and best places, which is the reason we're here today. Another thing that we want to be getting across in this initiative is apart from giving companies that employees say they're great places to work the accolade that they deserve, is to address the issue around how the industry is portraying itself as somewhere to work, for particularly we think for young people. There's maybe not so much in the OTA space, but certainly in areas like engineering and so on. There's a real potential issue there that we're not getting the talent through from the bottom. But this idea of being a slightly more diverse industry now, hands up in all fairness, there's a lot of there's maybe a lack of diversity, although actually having been seen a lot of it, there's a lot there. It's just maybe not the senior levels yet, so that hopefully will come through with time. But your observations about the industry as a whole, in terms of the way it's portraying itself out there in the industry, you've got a huge, as you will know, huge battle for talent, particularly in tech globally. Again, COVID exposed that this is a big problem, not just in aviation but throughout. So we're as an industry, we're competing against other possibly more attractive industries. So any thoughts on how you think aviation should get out there publicly and promote itself as a great place to work?
Well, I think one of the things behind that really is that we're in the travel industry, and regardless of the kind of the segment within the travel industry, be it OTA or airline or whatever else it could be, we are in the travel industry, and what COVID kind of showed was that we're resilient as an industry. Yes, we're competing for talent, and yes, there is some talent challenges on the horizon when you look at that side of it, but it's making sure the businesses are providing that opportunity for their people, and making sure that one of the areas that we do this, for example, is we really focus on making sure that the teams have got the reward and recognition process in place. That helps people understand what their role, what their function, what their contribution is to the business. And when people have got that purpose, regardless of the industry or kind of the segment that they're working in, when you understand what you're bringing to your company, then you can develop yourself, your own skills and your own abilities, but also you can provide a real valid contribution to the organization and the success of your organization. And we do that in different ways internally at trip.com, but making sure that our passengers, as well as our people within the business, are being looked after, is really at the heart of what we want to do and get across.
And like you say, that international nature of the business, by definition, if you're wanting a career that takes you around the world, it takes you to interesting places, introduces you to new cultures. That's exactly what the product is.
There's a real
synergy there. Gen Z, I'm aware. If we know anything about Gen Z, it's about going out and experiencing the world. So so what a great place to do and have a career as well. So
get paid for what you love.
I suppose on the flip side of that, there's an inevitable issue around the industry tackling sustainability issues, which again is a huge factor, and possibly a factor when people do decide which industries they want to work in. So the industry has to adopt that, has to accept that, and has to do what it can. Now, I see lots of things happening. Again, this is something you just have to do as an industry now. It's part of the table stakes of being in business.
Absolutely. And again, sustainability and the environmental factors of travel in general is at the top of everyone's agenda, regardless of whether you're a traveller or you're a worker within the industry and within the segments. And again, it's fantastic seeing people kind of take that seriously and bring that in, not just for kind of sustainability and operational efficiencies as kind of technologies and functions change. But the other thing that I think complements that really well is that travel is there to kind of break down cultural differences and look at the kind of the travel proposition. Why do people travel? So not only is there the sustainability kind of focus and improvements that we're seeing a focus on, but ultimately we're enabling people to enhance themselves by traveling, be it for work or for pleasure, but at the same time break down some of those cultural barriers and differences that we see at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So in the time we've got left, let's talk about the extent to which people are doing exactly that. We were speaking to the guys at Amadeus recently, and they believe 24 is we're now back to pre-COVID levels. Not sort of across the board, but some areas actually we've gone beyond sort of 2019 levels. So there's a degree of optimism in that sense, although they felt that some people felt it would come back a bit earlier than it has. I'm not too sure. I think when it hit, people were definitely talking about 23, 24 as a kind of recovery year. Is that how you see things? You've got an interesting perspective on this as a business because you're global, so you see it from a global point of view, but you're Shanghai HQ'd, so you see that China impact, which obviously is different, has been different to everywhere else due to how they approached the COVID situation. So where do you see things, James? What gives you the optimism that we've probably put the disaster of COVID behind us as an industry?
Well, I think if you take a step back to see kind of that recovery process, what we saw as an organisation across Trip.com Group was really Europe was where we started to see the recovery come from in those first kind of years when we kind of put the time frame onto it. And that was pan-European travel and then international travel outside of Europe. We then saw the Americas recover second, and then Asia was the last kind of region geographically to kind of really kind of, as you say, get back to those kind of recovery levels. We see a lot of optimism when we kind of look at our partners, be it airline or hotel partners or destination partners. Their kind of focuses and their strategies and their plans, there's always growth now. So as we say, during that COVID period, we still saw cargo being moved around. We still saw VFR, visiting friends and relatives, some corporate travel, and also student travel was still kind of happening. So again, we saw that resilience, and now we're kind of seeing the cherry come back on the cake, which is some of that kind of leisure travel as well as the business travel. We'll bring into it some of the kind of the goodness that we were talking about previously.
I think the recovery was led by leisure, wasn't it? Because corporates, some were still not allowing their members of staff to travel anyway. So the recovery driven by sometimes quite high-end leisure travel as well was really quite encouraging, wasn't it? Are you seeing business now ticking it back up, the corporate travellers back?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we have the Trip Biz product, which kind of focuses on that, and they're looking at their kind of global footprint. We get a lot of discretionary business travel on Trip.com as a platform as well. So from our side, yes, we're seeing the kind of that rise of the premium cabins and premium travelers. Again, when we speak to our airline partners, that's one of the big focuses. What are they doing with their kind of premium cabins, as well as their revenue generating opportunities that they can looking at it.
And what about these big growth markets? I mean, China, you all know very well. Is that outbound Chinese booker? Are they back as they were pre-COVID, desperate to come out and see the world? But there's other markets like India where the potential there is enormous. You've got the Middle East. So how are you seeing the sort of the regional play?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing the growth coming from many different regions, and again, as we're expanding our footprint into those markets as well, from a point of sale, from a traveller perspective, we're enhancing our capabilities to take advantage of that and ride some of that wave as those regions grow organically themselves as well. From our perspective, the Asia travellers into Europe, one of the interesting things we find from that is they don't just do kind of point-to-point travel, so they're not just flying into London and then back home. They'll want to fly into one or two different cities. Just like as a traveller, if you went to Asia, you might choose to fly into one country, visit 2 or 3 before you come home. So we're seeing a little bit of a change in some of those kind of travel patterns and what they're actually doing. And again, if someone's travelling for business, are they extending that for a little bit of leisure at the same time? But we are seeing the Asia kind of recovery and some of those new emerging markets kind of doing very well.
And you were saying before we started this, product mix as well. So you're seeing quite an interesting trend around selling rail and selling other ancillary type products, which is all very interesting for the travel industry per se, because everybody wants to get into that. I think a lot of airlines are out there, some of their biggest revenue earners are ancillaries, or certainly it's the one that's growing most. So that's an interesting that you're seeing that people are looking to buy associated products with a flight and hotel, it's not just about that anymore.
Exactly. It's no longer about just the ticket that you're purchasing. It's about the kind of the whole proposition that you've got, be it on that flight itself or be it down route. And again, one of the areas that we really focus ourselves on in our customer experience is that we can offer that local product in your own local language and currency. So when you are traveling, you can really make sure that you're using that holistic trip focus for multiple lines of business. Yes. Yeah.
And so just to wrap up finally, as we sit here today in your offices, COVID behind the industry, do you think, or is there still a little bit of recovery to?
Rather than say whether COVID's behind us, I would say it's how we're making sure we're resilient for what happens next, and be that another pandemic, and who knows, kind of.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But yeah, I think from our side, we've seen that kind of organic recovery, and it's now kind of making sure that we're kind of being focused on our growth strategy and the emerging markets, as you say, and then making sure that we're using the technology and people to really make sure that we're in the best position to deal with whatever comes next. Because one thing we know from the travel industry, there's always something that we haven't accounted for around the corner.
There might well be something next, and who would want to guess what that might be?
Yes.
Hopefully, like you say, hopefully whatever it is, we've got an industry that's more resilient.
Yes.
Quicker to react.
Yes.
I'm not saying it was slow to react. I mean, what happened during COVID was no one would have guessed, would they?
Not at all. And just seeing kind of how our airline partners and people within the industry did kind of pivot and adapt to that was made it proud to kind of work in the industry for myself. So, yeah.
Certainly, what I've seen over the last year working specifically in aviation, it's such a complicated industry. So many moving parts that need to go right. And they go right so often, it's almost a miracle. So when something like that hits,
that's when you need the people to make sure that you've got the people on the ground to kind of use their knowledge and their expertise, and then use those technology and tools to really kind of make sure you can scale it in terms of a support function as well.
So, true. And glad you brought it back to people at the end, because that wraps it up quite nicely. So James, look, thanks for your time today. We'll wrap things up now. For those listening, please go and have a look at our Best Places to Work in Aviation website, because we're still looking for entrants to register to become a best place for this year, in the inaugural year. We'll be announcing those winners towards the end of the year, and then having an event to give them the accolade they deserve, because their employers are telling them that they are a great place to work. And of course, do look out for future editions of ABNcast, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any. James, thanks very much.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for having me.
See you around. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Cheers. We're delighted that our friends at Amadeus have agreed to be the launch sponsor for ABNcast. And while they do not endorse the opinions and views expressed, they are keen to support a new forum for open discussion and debate around the future of aviation. Amadeus's technology powers the global travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, always with an eye on how the industry can evolve, on how the travel industry can better serve travellers, bring people together, explore new experiences, and do business. Travel should be meaningful and personal, and it must be centred around the traveller, which is why Amadeus is investing to create their technology to put more power into people's hands. As an industry, we only progress by working together, and Amadeus's open platform is connecting the entire global travel and hospitality ecosystem. Our environment, our communities, and our destinations matter. Together with our customers and industry partners, Amadeus is working to make travel a force for social and environmental good, and ABNcast will be placing a specific focus on these themes in future editions. To find out more, visit www.amadeus.com, and make sure you subscribe to ABNcast, which you can do on Aviation Business News' YouTube channel or on Spotify, so you don't miss out on any future edition. And please tell your friends and colleagues all about us. Thanks very much.